Yes.
DiVincenzo with the lay-in.
Oh, you got a couple guys on all rookie teams. They've had guys who've had success here in the NBA.
The turnover by Patrick Williams.
And that's what you want to see Patrick do.
Now it's Randall.
All right, so you want to talk Timberwolves preseason?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, because you're looking for those like little clues about what this team's identity might be, right?
Right.
We've got two key games to unpack here. We've got that Knicks matchup where things were kind of clicking, and then that Bulls game where Coach Finch really threw some curveballs our way.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see that Bulls game especially because, you know, you can just feel him almost using these games as like real tests for different lineups and different strategies.
Totally, like he's got this whole toolkit, and he's like, all right, let's try this tool, let's try this tool.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of tools, can we talk about Anthony Edwards for a second?
Please.
His performance against the Knicks, 31 points, 8 threes.
Yeah.
This wasn't just your average, like, ant explosion.
No,
You know what I mean?
it's the commitment to the three-point shot that I think is the big takeaway here.
Okay.
You know, this is something that he really focused on in the offseason, remember?
He did, yeah.
And you can see it right. He took 8 threes against the Sixers. He took 13 against the Knicks.
Wow.
And then he took 16 against the Bulls. 16 three-point attempts.
That's got to be almost half his shots.
It's a ton. And you know, the consistency isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
He only made 3 of those 16 against the Bulls. But the volume, I think, tells us something really important.
Okay.
The Timberwolves are designing plays for him to shoot from deep.
Interesting.
And if he even becomes a league average three-point shooter at that volume,
Right.
it changes their entire offense.
Yeah. Defenses can't sag off anymore.
Exactly.
Okay, so Edwards expanding his game a little bit, but what about the new guy in the room?
Right.
Everyone's waiting to see how Julius Randle is going to fit in.
Sure.
He finally takes the court against the Bulls.
Yeah.
Give me your first impressions.
I mean, it was solid but brief, you know.
Okay.
He had a respectable stat line, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. But, you know, this game wasn't really about padding the stats.
Right.
It was about seeing how he meshed with the team and...
And did he mesh? What were like the moments that stood out to you when you were watching him?
Well, I'll tell you, there were a couple of possessions where he drew a double team.
Okay.
And he found an open shooter on the perimeter for a good look.
Nice.
And you know, that kind of playmaking from the power forward position is not something that the Timberwolves have had consistently.
Right.
And so that was really encouraging to see.
Okay, so showing that passing ability. But I do remember that Bulls game being a little bit unusual because they had played the Nuggets the night before.
Right. They had that back-to-back,
Yeah.
which is why I think his limited minutes were so telling.
Okay.
You know, that back-to-back right before the season opener against the Lakers, I think Coach Finch was being cautious. We got a glimpse.
Yeah.
But the real test of how Randall fits,
Right.
that starts with the Lakers game.
Almost like we got like a little sample platter of Randall.
Yep.
But the main course is still to come.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of fitting in, did you notice those 3-guard lineups that Finch was running against the Bulls?
Yeah.
Conley, Edwards, and D'Lo all on the court at the same time? That's some serious firepower.
Yeah. It was definitely a departure from their usual lineups.
Right.
I mean, they went through like 10 different combinations in the first half alone.
Wow.
So this wasn't just Finch experimenting or anything. This felt like a calculated strategy.
So what's the thought process there? Like, why mess with a lineup that on paper already has some pretty dangerous scoring options?
Well, I think you got to think about the NBA today. It's all about pace and space.
Okay.
You look at a team like the Warriors, you know, their success with the death lineup, smaller, faster raining threes.
Right.
That's a model that a lot of teams are trying to replicate.
Sure.
And I think the Timberwolves might be seeing if they can find their own version of that.
That makes sense. But with 3 guards out there, are we sacrificing size and defense? Because we saw in that Knicks game how dominant Rudy Gobert can be in the paint.
Sure.
But if he's constantly battling bigger guys down low, does that take away from his effectiveness?
Yeah, I mean, that's the trade-off, right?
Yeah.
You gain some offensive firepower, but you might give up something defensively.
Okay.
I think it'll be interesting to see how Coach Finch finds that balance.
Yeah.
Does he lean into the 3-guard lineup for, like, shorter busts to, you know, change the tempo of a game?
Okay.
Or is this something that we might see for longer stretches?
Right.
You know, we'll have to wait and see how it plays out in the regular season.
Yeah, it's definitely a storyline to watch. But before we get too caught up in the veterans here,
Right.
we got to talk about the rookies.
Of course.
There was so much hype around Dillingham and Shannon Jr. coming into this season.
For sure.
What were your takeaways from their limited minutes, especially in that Bulls game?
I think it's clear that Coach Finch is taking a cautious approach.
Yeah.
Especially with Dillingham, he's raw talent. He needs time to adjust to the speed and the physicality of the NBA. I mean, remember, even a seasoned veteran like Ricky Rubio took some time to find his footing in the league.
Right, and he was a highly touted prospect coming out of Europe.
Exactly.
So are we saying patience is key here?
I think so.
Okay.
And this isn't to say that they won't have their moments.
Right.
But I think expecting them to be like major contributors right out of the gate might be a little unrealistic.
Okay.
It's more likely we'll see them in carefully managed minutes,
Right.
Perhaps getting more playing time, if the Timberwolves build comfortable leads or if injuries arise.
It's a long season. You never know when those opportunities might come knocking. But it wasn't just Dillingham and Shannon Jr. who saw limited action.
Right. Garza and Dozier also fall into that category.
Okay.
They got a taste of the action, but were largely relegated to the bench.
So that's like a log jam at the back of the rotation, right?
It is.
It begs the question, what does this mean for guys like Clark Miller, Nix Edwards, Bates, Diapo, Marubi?
Right.
Like, these are players who didn't see a single minute against the Bulls.
Yeah, that's the tough reality of the NBA,
Yeah.
For some of these players, it's about showcasing their skills in the limited opportunities they get.
Yeah.
Whether it's in practice or garbage time.
Right.
For others, it might be about developing their game in the G League,
Right.
Waiting for their chance to shine.
It's about staying ready, staying hungry.
Yeah.
It's funny. We came into this deep dive wanting to uncover the Timberwolves' identity.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like we found like multiple identities, all kind of battling for dominance.
For sure.
You've got Edwards evolving into this potential three-point threat.
Right.
You've got Randall adding a new dimension to the offense.
Yeah.
And then these three-guard lineups that could like completely change the tempo of the game.
Absolutely.
Where does this leave us? What are your final thoughts as we head into the regular season?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that the Timberwolves have options.
Okay.
They're not locked into one style of play.
Right.
This preseason showed us glimpses
Yeah.
of what this team could be.
Right.
And that's incredibly exciting.
It is exciting.
But it also means there are a lot of questions still to be answered. Can Edwards find consistency with his outside shot?
Right.
How will Randall's arrival change the team's dynamics?
Yeah.
And will those three-guard lineups be a game changer or just a fun experiment?
That's a little preseason flirtation.
Exactly.
So it's like we've unwrapped this beautifully complex puzzle, but we still have to put all the pieces together.
You do.
And for fans like you out there, this isn't just about watching games. It's about witnessing an evolution.
It is.
Pay attention to the details, because those seemingly small decisions, like who's on the court, what plays are being called,
Right.
those are all clues to how this team is defining itself.
I love that.
So keep your eyes peeled when the Timberwolves face off against the Lakers on October 22nd. That's when the real games begin.
That's going to be good.
All right. Thanks for diving deep with us,
Yeah.
everybody.